Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel, which also happens to be our last session of the day. I am Monica Beckwith, and I'm your host today. And I would like to provide a little bit background on myself. I am the JVM architect at Microsoft, and been working in the field with Hotspot JVM in the field of OpenJDK and SunJDK and everything for a long time now. In this panel, I want to be talking about Java 17 and everything that has led us to where we are today. Before diving in, I would like to welcome our panelists, Kristen, Simon, and Rory. That's the order I see on my screen right now. Dear panelists, would you like to introduce yourselves? Kristen, please go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen O'Leary. I'm a senior developer relations engineer at Google. And I work in Google Cloud, and I work on Java client libraries, all open source, all fun stuff, particularly on cloud native databases.
Simon?
Yes, I am the Deputy CTO at Azul. I'm Simon Ritter, and I have been working with Java really right from the very beginning because I joined Sun Microsystems way back in 1996, about the same time that JDK 1.0 came out. And I've followed it all the way through the Sun years, the Oracle years, and now at Azul.
Awesome, thank you. Rory?
Hi, everyone, from Johannesburg, South Africa. Yes, that is a country, not actually a continent. I'm speaking from my home office with my streaming plants. I'm 4'1". I've got brown hair. I've got glasses, and I'm sitting in front of a Macintosh. Yes, a developer advocate working for Microsoft who uses a Macintosh with a Chrome browser who advocates Java. The irony is not lost on me. So really happy to be here.
Thank you all so much. With this panel, I would love to have questions on the chat so that we can have a good discussion. And I have a few questions of my own for the panelists, especially starting with what is a JEP, the Java Enhancement Proposal? Because I know we will talk about JEPs here, how many JEPs went into Java 17 and yada, yada, yada. But before that, would you like to talk about
I think that's probably one for me, isn't it? So JEPs are interesting because if you look at the way that the Java has developed, we have the Java community process, and this was something that was started. Let me think. It was probably around 2004, 2005, maybe, by Sun Microsystems, and it was a way of trying to address the needs that developers had in terms of having a more formal standard for Java that wasn't necessarily just controlled by Sun. And so they started the Java community process, and we have what are called JSRs, Java specification requests, which are different aspects of Java. And there's an expert group for that. I'm on the expert group for the Java SE standard, which was really the way that we used to develop the new features in Java. Now, because we've moved to an open source model with OpenJDK, what we've seen is that the developers want to have more contributions from outside of just a few companies. So they created this idea of JDK enhancement proposals. JEPs are all about sort of reasonable sized pieces of work that will take, a fair amount of time to actually create. And anyone who's a committer in terms of OpenJDK, so it's not just Oracle, anyone who has committer status can submit a JEP and propose an idea for a new feature that will go into Java, whether it's in the language, whether it's in the libraries, whether it's in JVM. And so it's a sort of, as they describe it, a 3-year plan for how Java can evolve. And that's kind of the best way of describing JEPs.
Thank you, Simon. You covered, you talked about 3-year plan. There's also this whole release cadence, and recently, actually, there was a slight reduction in the duration of the LTS, I think, Kristen, would you like to talk about the release cadence or even what LTS means and where we are in our LTS cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with LTS. So LTS is long-term support. And so what that means is every so often, certain releases, 17 being one of them, is going to be supported long-term as opposed to, forgive me, I don't know the non-LTS support cadence, but longer than a non-LTS one so a lot of times developers will choose just to pin on LTS versions because they know it'll be supported in the long term. And then in terms of release cadence, it's funny, just anecdotally, I remember, I believe it was after Java 8 was released, the release cadence really picked up. It was much more frequent than I remembered before that. And again, apologies, my memory is a bit fuzzy, so panelists, please feel free to jump in and give some more history. But I do remember, there was a big gap between 7 and 8, and then all of a sudden it's like 9, 10, da, 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 da. Now we're all the way up to 17. So I want to say it's every year, every 6 months. Can someone correct me on that? Because I don't actually know the exact number.
Yeah, it's every 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's exciting. It's exciting to see so many new versions pop out more frequently, new JEPs getting released, whether in preview or GA. But yeah, I
think what happened was people got so used to the cadence, they said more, and they want those features out of preview and in their hands. And then Mark Reinhardt actually said, "This is working. Let's just go quicker." And the poor developers and probably run by Oracle like, no, please, just we're not managing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that because the switch happened at JDK 9, and Oracle will tell you that JDK 9 was the last major release of Java, meaning it had multiple years of effort behind it. And as Kristen said, we had long periods between different JDK releases. I mean, 6 to 7 was the longest one. I think it was over 4 years between releases of Java. And now we're doing one every 6 months, which is really much faster than we've ever seen before. And it seems to be working really well. And one of the real benefits of that is the fact that we can have this idea of preview features, where we introduce a feature, but without making it like part of the standard straight away, and soliciting feedback, getting people's opinion on whether it works or not, and then still having time to make changes before it actually gets put into the standard.
Rory, you have a fan in the audience. Getting a shout out from
Johannesburg. Hey, bring your dollars, bring your pounds. We're open for business, please, and open up your borders, please, for me to come there. So one of the things I really miss completely is in live events and being able to do and just have that vibrancy with the ecosystem. Like right now. Like when I bring up code, there's not that same feeling that you have that, oh, what IDE are you using? Are you using that IDE? Look what I'm using over there. There's a little bit of competition that developers have with it, and I miss that greatly. Like Simon would bring up NetBeans and I'll bring up Visual Studio Code, and we would like have that little tiz there, but I miss that really.
I'm going to be completely honest with you and say that I have actually kind of made the switch. So I've moved away from NetBeans, IntelliJ.
I'm IntelliJ also.
I'm still a fan of NetBeans, by the way. I love NetBeans.
I love NetBeans, but my problem is that it's not quite keeping track of the changes quite as quickly as it needs to. So I was trying to use 17 features, and it's not quite there yet with NetBeans. So IntelliJ, I should try Visual Studio, but it's a little tough.
No, Visual Studio Code. Okay, that's like
Visual Studio Code.
Smaller version of the monolith, though, and we've just hit 1 million users. So
really,
there's a million users. So if you think about it, 6 million Java developers, we're 1/6 of them use Visual Studio Code with Java.
Very good.
There's a question from the audience, but before I go into those questions, Simon, you mentioned about using Java 17 features. Were you talking about preview, or you were just talking about one that actually made it into 17?
In that case, it was preview features because I was looking at the pattern matching for switch, and I wanted to do. Because I'm doing a workshop day after tomorrow. I have to remember it. I'm doing a workshop the day after tomorrow, and I was trying to test out some of the code I was using for that, and so I needed to be able to use that, and so it was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to use IntelliJ for that.
It's a good idea. Rory, how about you? What kind of features? Let's start with 11 up until 17, and of course the preview, so 17 plus. If you had to list top 3, what would your first one be?
Well, I'm all about the Benjamins when it comes to cloud. So I work for a small startup out of Seattle, Microsoft, and we have a most magnificent cloud. And with that cloud, we have all of these features, and a lot of them are built per second. So when developers come to me, they go, okay, that's great, make it quicker, make it faster, and everything. So I've been following the garbage collections, and everyone has all of these metrics. The first thing, you want to know what a developer does, and all of the Java champions, they go, okay, cool, I've got this and that and that, and then I make it go quicker and everything like that. And that's great and everything, but pop it on each cloud and then tell them how many milliseconds it runs. The biggest problem is that this all runs on containerized hypervisors. So it like the garbage collector runs great on that. Now pop it on a Docker and a Docker and a Docker and a Docker and a Docker Compose and see if it runs there. So we're still kind of looking at how we can actually make better cost savings for our customers with all of these garbage collectors. So I'm really following that heavily. And second of all, I speak to millions of developers who have just started with Java, and records is a great way to say, we're sorry about the boilerplate. We know you can't let that go, but the getters and setters, we kind of got rid of them a little bit with records. And it's a great way. And I've been saying this ever since, like, my cousin C# kind of got getters and setters, and I said to them, like, we'll get it eventually. Guess what? We got it. So I'm really keen with records, and finally also I love the idea that the flight recorder and the profiler is included as standard, though, because Java developers are only as good as the code that they're proud of. And they should be proud enough to actually go and look at all of that code and say, wow, I'm using strings when I should use chars, or lists when I should use these collections. And that's a great, for me, an opportunity to improve the performance.
Thank you. I think that was very descriptive, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching you talk about these things too. So
I've had so much caffeine and coffee right now.
I love the energy.
You're just apparitions in my mind right now, just floating.
It's so awesome to have you on the panel. Kristen, how about yourself? Like, any features that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, Rory, you stole my first one. I was going to talk about records too, but since you already covered that beautifully, I will bring up something else that I think is really just a nice to have convenience feature. The string formatting. So forgive me again, I don't remember what version that came out in, but basically, if let's say you're dealing with something like a JSON string, which is indents and many lines just to print out some sort of blob or object or whatever, that can get kind of annoying to paste into code if you want to just set it equal to a string. So with the string formatting, you can do 3 quotes at the top, put in all your text, and then 3 quotes at the bottom, and it just looks nicer in your code. Again, this isn't probably anything related to performance or optimizations or anything, but to me, as someone who reads code, I think it's a lot nicer. I think it's also going to come in handy a lot with things like, I don't know, unit testing, where you're passing in a mocked out JSON something or other just to test your code. I'm making this up, obviously, but I definitely think it's worth checking out. I think it just makes the developer's readable life easier, or someone who's reviewing your code. It just is much nicer to look at, and just is, yeah, I think a really nice addition.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Simon, how about yourself?
Yes, well, I mean, obviously, I kind of reiterate what both Rory and Kristen already said. Records, yeah, I mean, it's just a great thing because it's. I still struggle to think that we've taken so long to get the idea of a tuple in Java and just the ability to represent something like that in a simple way. So it's great to see records and make life a lot easier and reducing the amount of boilerplate code. I do like multi-line strings or text blocks as we call them,
Sure.
and the ability to make life easier in that respect. The other thing that I really like is helpful null pointer exceptions. And again, it's like, how has it taken us 25 years to figure out that it'd be really nice to figure out where a null pointer actually happened in terms of, is it A dot B dot C dot whatever? And so that's nice that we now have that ability to see where the null pointer actually happens in a chain of calls. Yeah, so there's lots of nice little kind of things that they've done in terms of making life easier for developers around reducing the amount of boilerplate code. So records is a good example of that. Pattern matching in the introduction, both with instance of, and now as we've seen with JDK 17 in switch statements and switch expressions as well. So it's all things like that that just make life for developers much easier, removing some of those rough edges.
That's cool. That's cool. So the question from the audience is how JEP gets accepted for next release, and how is the project management for each JEP? So I can start with that, and I know Azul also, has contributed to multiple ones, and there are actually there are a few proposals by Azul as well. So I'm of course going to come back to you, Simon, with that question itself. But the whole thing about JEP is that you have a project, or you have a project in mind that you think you can contribute to, and you can also go from not mere discussion to actual realization of the project that you are proposing. So, for example, Microsoft, we proposed the Windows on ARM port. And the way we did this was that we made sure that we had something working, and we did our tests. We had a CI/CD pipeline working. And then we went out to the community saying that, hey, we would like to contribute this to the community because we have products that will need Java to work on them, especially the Surface Pro X's. So the community was very open in that they wanted something that would work, of course, on Windows and ARM, but also this big contribution that we had. They were very helpful in accepting it. So the JEP goes from the proposal state to various different ones where it has to be accepted, it has to be proposed to target, and then it has to be implemented and then targeted. So it goes through various phases. And if you go to the JEP, I think it's 2.0 now, we're JEP 2.0. So please feel free to read about the different steps it goes through. And then right after that JEP was proposed, we also got this JEP from Azul Systems, which was actually macOS on ARM64. So since we did the initial kind of making it more general code base with respect to ARM64, so macOS could be plugged in as well. So that's how I know that, and that's one of the JEPs that made into Java 17. So I'm very happy with that, our collaboration and everything. So yes, Simon, would you want to talk about the newer proposals that Azul has contributed to?
Yeah, I mean, JEPs are an interesting idea because, Java is a platform that, as Rory said, there's millions of developers who use Java. So what you don't want is to suddenly make lots of changes to it in a way that affects things like backwards compatibility and, makes it harder for developers. So the idea is that you have to be very careful in terms of the changes that you make. And that means that when JEPs are proposed, you have to have a good sort of idea of what's actually going to happen. And it has to be done in a way that the rest of the OpenJDK community can look at it and say, yes, that actually makes sense. So we went through the whole process of, I think we were the first company to actually add a JEP other than Oracle to the JDK, and we literally added one method to the run class and or runnable class, and it was thread class, and the amount of work that involved was really quite substantial, but that was good because you don't want people adding methods to thread or runnable or core classes and just saying, oh, I think this is a good idea, let's put it in there and see what happens. So we had to go through a number of steps to make that work. And really the thing with JEPs, as Monica said, is you need to demonstrate that this will work. So you actually have to come with code, not just an idea. Come with code, come with a proof of concept, make sure that it all works and you can demonstrate it, and then prove to people that that will actually work and can be taken into the Open JDK as a whole. So it's a nice process. It works well in terms of keeping Java moving forward, but not in a way that people can just throw ideas in and go, let's try this, let's try that sort of thing.
Anyone else would like to add something before we move on to the upgrade process? Cool. So the upgrade process, there's a question asking us about, can we talk about the upgrade process and rolling out the newer Java versions to the dev team? I think that it depends on different organizations and how the dev team likes to keep up with it, and the dependencies on underlying libraries and other API calls that they make, if they have moved to the next level or not. And I think it kind of ties into the next question: why are there so many orgs still at Java 7 and 8? And I think it's kind of all together if you kind of bind them together. But anybody wants to step in and talk about? Yes, Rory.
So I help advocate code spaces. I don't work for GitHub. We like the company enough and we bought them. And one of the features of CodeSpace is remote containers. So it's a feature that came there and GitHub Codespaces uses. And what remote containers does is that it allows you to spin up a Docker instance, and you can test your instance, and you can run an entire environment on it. And GitHub Codespaces, you can go from 2 CPUs all the way to 32 CPUs. And I'm drunk on power right now because it means that I've got all of these projects on my GitHub repos, and I don't have to take my little MacBook Pro, and I don't have to install 30 different versions of JDK or at any time. I can just spin up an instance, see what breaks, if it does break, and then bring it home to old Mackie here and say, wait a second, I know what I'm getting. And we've seen a lot of movement into containers, making that life easier with test containers also. But why not just your entire environment and spin it up? So get started on that GitHub Codespaces now, and I can help you through that. And it's just the way that we're moving there. Why do I have to work on one reproducible environment? I think I've got like 7 JDKs on my MacBook and just floating around there, around that. But probably about another 40 in GitHub Codespaces right now, which I don't have to worry about. They're cattle to me rather than pets, and that's I love that.
Yeah, I think looking at the question there, so people are talking about, still running JDK 7 and JDK 8. I know that we come across a lot of customers who are running older versions of Java, even as far back as, well, I mean, we support JDK 6, but we talk to customers who are still running like 1.4.2, 1.3, which is a little bit scary. But I think the idea is that you need to think about how to migrate. The big switch is from 8 to 9 plus, because you have to adapt to the idea of modularity, and that does introduce some interesting things in terms of it's more to do with the encapsulation of internal APIs that has an impact on how you can move your applications across. But a lot of work has been done with that. So now people are really sort of focusing on moving from 8, which is a long-term support release, They were moving to 11, which was the previous long-term support release, and now 17 is the current long-term support release. So it's this idea that we do have these specific releases that have extended updates available for them, and those are the ones that people who are looking for that longevity of using that particular platform, they're focusing on those. So not necessarily moving to 15, 16, 18, 19, and so on, but just focusing on those ones that do have extended updates available to them.
Yeah,
Kristen,
I'll just
yeah.
Yes, thank you. I will just echo what everyone else is saying, and I think the important thing here, and why Java 17 in particular is so exciting, is because it's LTS, and I think we all understand and can empathize with the pain of I can't upgrade right now because XYZ. I've certainly been there myself in previous lives, and totally get it. So I think that's why also it's just exciting to see that 17 is LTS, and with this increased release cadence, hopefully we'll get more LTSs at a sooner velocity.
Yes, because that was one of the big changes, was with the release of 17, we've seen that Oracle have proposed, I believe it's probably now accepted, we're moving from 3 years between long-term support releases to 2 years between long-term support releases. So the next one's going to be JDK 21. Seems weird to say that JDK 21.
That's what somebody was saying, that their org, by the time the org reaches 17, Java will reach its 100th version, which is kind of weird, like you said, right? For the longest time we were stuck on JDK 7, because I was always on the performance team, so keeping up with the next releases, as well as keep maintaining the performance and other things, and relating performance updates. I don't know if anybody remembers, those used to exist back then. And so just thinking about how Java is moving faster than I can keep up with it is so surreal for me. Is working on the old team, got used to those things.
Yeah. I just worked out actually that in 2025 we'll have JDK 25.
Ooh,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That works out nicely.
Yeah. There's and thank you, Gail. He posted the link to the JEP.
That's it. Thread, yeah, on spin weight.
Spin weight. And I did not realize. Thank you for mentioning that. I did not realize that Azul was the first non-Oracle company to propose a JEP. And
I think we should be fair there. I don't think we were the first to propose a JEP. I think we were the first to actually get one accepted into the Open JDK.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're right that there's a lot of there's a huge distinction there. So yeah, so cool, good job, kudos.
It was interesting to see how much work was involved, which I actually think was, as I said, it was a good thing, because it means that the governance of OpenJDK and the progression of Java is very well controlled, and we're not just adding things and throwing things in just because we think, oh, okay, it'd be nice to do this or do that. And I do have to say that people like Brian Gertz and Mark Reinhold and John Rose, who are really kind of the architects of the OpenJDK, they do a fantastic job in terms of marshalling all of these ideas that because people keep coming up with loads of great ideas of, yeah, let's do this, let's do that. Let's include multiple inheritance. Yeah, let's not. Let's include operator overloading. No, let's not do that. Things like that.
That's true. Simon, you mentioned about the preview and previews and incubators. Is there any other than pattern matching, would you want to talk about some incubators that you have tried in the past and they have changed or they have been removed? Because that has happened as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen any removed, and I think that's probably unlikely. I mean, in an extreme situation, we could get to the point where a feature really people don't like it, and so they actually remove it. But again, I think the architects are knowledgeable enough that they understand which things actually make sense. But we've definitely seen that feedback from developers has sort of had an impact. So if we look at something like switch expressions, that was the first one that came in as a preview feature, and they suggested that for the combination of the old style syntax with a switch expression, it was to use break with a value which would be returned from the expression. And yes, I mean, it's sort of overloading of the break operator, and it will work because you can break from a switch statement, you can break to a label out of a loop, and a label can't start with a number, so you can use a break with a number to break out of a switch expression. But people thought that was a bit too much overloading, and they said, yeah, let's use something else. So the developers went back and they said, okay, we'll use yield instead of break, and that does make things clearer. So I think that's a great example of how feedback from developers has shaped the way that the JEP works in the end, the new feature works in the end. And we've seen other examples of that with multi-line switch statement, multi-line strings, not switch statements, multi-line strings, with the inclusion of a couple of new escape characters and things like that. So it definitely works really well.
Thank you. Rory, what about either the preview features or incubators, or even the deprecation and removals of some features that were already there, for example, the RMI or anything like that, that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I was trying to think the last time I actually ran an activation, an RMI activation. And the first time I actually used, Java, Corba was still a thing. So we would create our orb there, and I would connect to a bank, and I would suck money out, and I'll do other things. And I was like, no, don't take that away. I made my living off that. Don't take it away. So when that left, I was like, okay, maybe that's a good thing. And then the worst thing ever was when getting rid of those XML binding libraries, because I didn't realize how many people actually were using them and how many libraries, and suddenly Java 9 just murdered everything. And I was like, whoa, we need to go to JSON. And that set me back a long time. And I'm sure there's still some libraries right now that are broken completely by using that. And people still on Java 8 and going, I can't. There's something going on there and happening there, and I can't move over. So there are still breaking changes that I speak to customers around, just all the way back from Java 8. But the RMI activation, it just brings back memories. And it also shows me about the new RPC memory that we're going to include now. And I'm very keen about that, because it distributed versus localized and everything, it's like ebb and flows in PCs. You get a strong PC or a strong server, and we move from that. Now we're going back to somewhere, and somewhere has memory, and we're going to go use its memory rather than localized memory though. So really keen to see what's happening up there. But that means that an IoT device that might have memory, I can speak to it in Java and I can get it to do stuff. And I'm really keen about that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That, the XML binding stuff, there are some benchmarks, if people know about spec benchmarking committee. So there are benchmarks, spec JBB 2015, and then spec cert. And they had so many dependencies, and spec cert had dependency on Nazorn, if anybody remembers Nazorn. So it's always interesting to see how they break and how we adapt, right? And the benchmarks are still there. They just adapted to the changes, and that was awesome. How about you, Kristen? Would you like to share something?
Yeah, one that I can think of, which was a while ago. I was actually working on a talk for some conference. I can't remember. I was trying to remember if it was QCon or not. But I was showing, this was when 9 was, I don't think released yet, but it was just about to be released. So I was using it, or maybe it was, I can't even remember. Obviously this was a while ago. But I was doing where they changed the reflection rules and what you could do with reflection and what you were now not allowed to do. And I remember on certain calls, the first time I was using a JDK 9 build, it failed saying, error, you can't use, I think it was accessible or whatever it was. And then a couple weeks later, I was practicing my presentation, and I guess I must have gotten a newer version of the JDK. And I think because of feedback, they actually softened it, so it wasn't a failure anymore, it was a warning. And I think where previously you had to manually override it in the command line saying it's okay, just give me a warning, don't fail, whereas they switched the warning to the default. So I thought that was pretty interesting of how the strictness of this new rules around reflection changed I presume based on feedback and people saying, wait, we can't migrate our code that quickly. Like stop failing on us. Give us a warning first and give us some more time. So that's the one that comes to mind. Again, a couple of years ago, but thought it was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually why JDK 9 got delayed twice, was because
there we go.
there was a lot of feedback on the effect of encapsulating the internal APIs and reflection, and so the OpenJDK developers actually had to go back and say, yeah, we're going to break too much stuff if we do this straight away. And it's interesting because JDK 17 has actually changed that slightly as well. They introduced what they called the big kill switch, which was the minus illegal access flag, which was introduced in JDK 9. And the default in JDK 9 was to allow access, so you could still do all the things you could do before. And then in JDK 16, they turned it to deny. So that turned off access by default, but you could still turn it back on again. And then in JDK 17, they've basically made the illegal access flag now do nothing. So they've kind of restrained things even more. Some things are still available. So like some misgun safe, you can still actually get access to, but a lot of the things. So that is one thing that is actually important about JDK 17, is that you need to test your applications, because if they do use any of the internal APIs or reflection in a particular way, they may actually break now or not work in the way you expect them to.
Cool. I just wanted to talk about the changes, especially with respect to the presentation. But a reminder, we only have 5 minutes or 4 minutes now left in this. So if you have any last minute questions, please post them here. So Kristen, when you mentioned about your presentation, I was doing a presentation on G1 garbage collector, and I wanted to be fancy and show logs, right? And so prior to JDK 9, GC logs were kind of pertaining to each garbage collector, and the verbosity would be kind of like whatever the garbage collector wants to share, sort of. And then we went to unified logging, which is great, but it broke all my parsers and everything. So this is like, and I had this presentation and I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I just wanted to show this print adaptive size policy, which is more verbose output of how the GC adapts. And I wanted to show it in JDK 9 because it was the super cool thing to do. And then I was like, I don't know how to like, there is of course, the log itself, but then the parser has to extract certain values from the log and then, plot it. And that's what I was doing. So it's interesting. It worked out really well in the end, but the panic that I had, oh my gosh, like I have to change my parsers. And then I hope that plotters are, because plotters were like Java and JFree chart based and everything. So fun times. But I mean, the unified logging is a big step in the right direction. Although we do see things changing slightly, but I think the parsers are easy. So I can use the same G1 parser for parallel GC and ZGC and everything like that, with very few modifications. So I'm really happy about that. Let's see if you have any other questions. I think that is it. Any closing statements anybody would like to make, or if there is any plugging your blogs or anything that you would like to do, please go ahead now.
Okay, well, now it's awkward because, the first person who goes who's going to plug anything is going to seem as greedy. So I ain't going first.
Okay, I'll go first then, because I'm happy to plug stuff. So I mean, I work for Azul, so we do Java. So either what we call Zulu, which is our builds of OpenJDK, or what we call Prime, which is our enhanced build of OpenJDK that does high performance, low latency, higher throughput type applications. Thank you.
I'll plug QCon because I'm actually also on the programming committee. So it's been so much fun working with Monica, particularly to put together this track. So also thank you, Monica, for putting together such an amazing day. I've learned so much. But yeah, my plug is please make sure you fill back your feedback. We'd love to hear it, and it'll make QCons even better in the future. So.
I will say it's been a pleasure to be on this panel and talk about Java in this way. I like things like this.
Okay, so we're going to do this again in South Africa. So we're all going to come fly down here. Please, I need friends. Okay, I've just got these plants for friends. You come down and we have
Rory,
safari.
I'm there anytime I can actually
Yeah,
get there. I'll be there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's a deal. Thank you so much, Monica, for the awesome moderation. Nice to see you, Simon. Great to meet you, Kristen.
You as well.
And thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you
very
all.
much,
everyone.
Thank you. It was a great honor to have you all here. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.